Hello everyone, I am the Weather Dude. Welcome back, and today we're going to be taking a deeper dive here into Invest 91L. If you did watch one of my past videos, my most recent one, where I talked about the past tropical disturbances, one of my more recent ones, I should say. I did talk about it in part along with Tropical Storm Philippe and, of course, another little disturbance that was in the Gulf of Mexico. But there have been some interesting developments with Invest 91L here, so we're going to take a deeper dive into it in this video. Of course, be sure to hit that subscribe button with the notification bell so you do not miss any future content. And we're just going to jump right into the video here. All right, so here we go. We have the National Hurricane Center, 91 L's up to a 90% chance of development in the next 7 days. And within the next 2 days, that's still at 80%. So showers and thunderstorms continue to show signs of organization in association with a broad area of low pressure, which is 700 miles west-southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands. Environmental conditions are forecast to be conducive for development, and we could have a depression or maybe even a tropical storm within the next day or two as the storm moves to the west-northwest across the tropical Atlantic. Now, the big question is what's going to happen to the path of the storm. Now, I will bring up here for 1 second Tropical Storm Philippe here, because initially it was supposed to go up out to sea, maybe strengthen into like a weak hurricane, kind of like recurve out this way. But now it just keeps on booking west, and now the track has changed completely, and it's now heading into the Bahamas, but it will be progressively weakening, and it might not even be a tropical storm anymore by the time we head to the end of this week. All right, so that's what's happening there with Philippe, kind of heading in this direction. Now, my thinking being, well, 91L isn't really far behind. Like if you look on this map right here, if we take a look at the 2-day map, you can kind of see Philippe is here. All right, 91L is probably only a few hundred or a couple hundred miles behind it. It's not far behind. So chances are they're going to be under the same steering pattern. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go the same place, right? But oftentimes, if there's a steering pattern in place, right, and it steers one storm one way, it won't follow the exact track because the steering pattern might, move around a little bit, it might strengthen, might weaken, whatever it may be, but it could follow a similar path. And I think that's what models are starting to pick up on now. All right, so if we take a look at the satellite imagery, this is of course the infrared satellite imagery. You can see a lot of convection blowing up around the center, mostly to the north and to the south. So basically where the center is, not much in the way of convection, but there is a low-level center out there somewhere, or I should say in there somewhere. Not necessarily very organized though, but you can notice it's pretty much heading on that due west path. So not necessarily west-northwest. It's pretty much heading on like a due west path here. You kind of see these giant clump of thunderstorms just moving pretty much in a due west direction. So we will see if that does change with time. If we take a look at the visible, which has now faded into the shortwave, because obviously I like this because it's that way it's not all lost. Once the visible goes away, we can still see some form of satellite, even though it's not the same visible satellite, if you will, because it only works in the daytime. But you can see right before the sun goes down, you can kind of see these blow up of thunderstorms, and it continues, right? You can really see with these deepening white colors, and as well to the south, right? So these two areas, all right, where we have those blossoming thunderstorms as well. You can also notice that it's dealing with a little bit of wind shear, especially to the north, I would say in this area up here, right? Definitely some winds blowing in different directions, but all in all, where the storm is, the storms are moving to the west. You don't see too much shear involved, but we will take a look at that further on in detail in just a little bit. If we take a look here at where the surface flow is currently, 39 degrees west and about 11 degrees north. So if we were to look at this here, I'll actually zoom back out for a sec. If we take a look at where that could be on our satellite, the lowest they claim somewhere around this region. Okay, again, about 39 degrees west and 11 degrees north. So they claim the low center to be somewhere in here, right, which seems about accurate. But again, the storm has been moving. So, right, because that was the low position as of around 2 p.m. Right. So yes, obviously it has moved. So then I would estimate the low center to be somewhere around here right now. All right. But of course, there's still a lot of convection around it, and that's what we're going to be watching here. So if we take a look at the track guidance, now this is interesting because this was not showing before. Before it was more of just, okay, it's going to go up north and go out to sea. Usually once the storm breaks a certain latitude, it's pretty much, once it goes north, it pretty much doesn't turn back. Usually doesn't, but there have been some exceptions. But notice this, right? It takes west-northwest turn, kind of goes a little bit more northwest maybe, but then just like Philippe, pretty much the exact same way, it bends to the west. and just keeps on going. Now, again, this doesn't mean it's going to impact the U.S., but once a storm approaches the Caribbean, if it is between 15 and 20 degrees north latitude, that usually means there is a decent chance that it could go towards or close to United States. Not necessarily striking it, but chances are if it's moving due west in this zone between 15 and 20 degrees north latitude, that's usually your telltale signal, at least in my opinion. But you can see it could very well, right? Some of the models say it still takes a turn north. It could very well just make a northwest turn, bend back to the west, and go north again, right? They could very well do that. All depends on the steering patterns, which we will also take a look at here. The GEFS model tracks showing pretty much what I just described, right? It goes more northwest, it makes a westward bend, but then it eventually does turn back north again. But that initial westward bend, right, which would happen a couple days from now, will still be something to watch because it's something that wasn't there before. Because initially, it was again just supposed to kind of go like, or something more like this. Excuse me. So it is going trending west, and also when storms move this far north in these deep open waters, they typically get stronger, right? So usually the stronger storms will move north, and slightly weaker storms could move south. But again, I think Hurricane Lee was an exception to that because it did technically go north, yes, but it didn't just recurve out to sea. It still did get pretty close to the East Coast, and of course, it did eventually strike New England. So some of these storms do get very strong again, depending on where they track. But typically, you can see when they move north, they really strengthen. And one of these model tracks actually has the pressure getting as low as 930 millibars. That's pretty impressive. If we take a look at GEPS, again, kind of same sort of thing, right? Kind of takes on that little bit more of a westward bend, and then eventually just recurves out to sea. Of course, with some notable exceptions, but again, these groups of models are certainly a little bit concerning because they do have a kind of a due west movement, right? Because some models kind of had it going like this, little turn in and out to sea. Some just have it keep going. Something we're going to need to watch, and that's why I wanted to bring it to your guys' attention today. If we take a look at the model intensity guidance, seems to be a decent consensus, very good consensus actually, that it becomes some type of hurricane, and some even have it becoming a major hurricane here. So if we take a look here at the 850 millibar vorticity signature, you can see here's Philippe. Here's our Invest 91L. Not looking too bad, honestly. Pretty much looks the same as Philippe in terms of the amount of energy. I mean, 91L has a little bit less, but I mean, this is the Invest back here, and then this is Philippe over here. Honestly, the energy seems to be going up a lot, right? There's a lot of energy within these thunderstorms. So, yeah, definitely looking like it's coming together pretty well, and probably will be named, probably again, like the National Hurricane Center said, within the next day or two. Here it is on satellite. You would honestly think this was Philippe, but no. Actually, Philippe is up here, having a little bit of a drier issue right now, but 91L staying to the south and, of course, avoiding that. And you also got to remember, that's another thing. It is pretty far south. Although Philippe did start pretty far south as well, but this is at 11 degrees north, like I said earlier, in latitude right now. So, I mean, just for reference, 10 degrees north is right here, and it's at 11. All right, and at 10 degrees north, that lines up with the northern tip of South America. Like, that's way south of the Caribbean islands. So the fact that it's 11, I mean, again, it's not moving due west, although it is right now, but it will eventually make more of a west-northwest turn, and we'll see where it goes. But yeah, Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico, definitely got to be on the lookout for this storm for sure. So, and of course, because of this, oceanic key content, you know I drill it home all the time because it's very important here. 40 degrees west, about where it was, 39. So it's pretty much sitting in here right now. Maybe something like over here. Not much in the way of oceanic heat content right now. Actually, I actually say it's a little bit further south. Right about here is the center. But the point is, once next day or two at the latest, it's going to start entering the zone where the oceanic heat content goes up a lot. And the sea surface temperatures may also tick up a little bit. So both of those things combined will lead to an increased chance for strengthening, because again, this isn't confirmed as a named storm. Yeah, we don't even have a track from the National Hurricane Center, but there's an increased chance that it could strengthen, especially once it enters this zone. And that's why a lot of storms that take that northward curve through this region, they strengthen so much because they kind of enter this region where the oceanic heat content, which is again that warm water, not just at the surface, but below the surface, which is even more energy that the hurricane or whatever storm it may be at the time can tap into, and that's why it's so important here. If you notice on the satellite here, how the storm is it is moving due west, but it almost looks like it's moving a little bit I wouldn't call it west-southwest, but it's moving almost, it's like a little bit to the south, right? And this is not uncommon because typically, like if you were to look at the track of a tropical cyclone, it never goes due west. Like it'll wobble around a little bit, of course. But if you do take a look, um, this map will pretty much explain why, right? And it's because we kind of have this upper level, right? This is the upper level wind map, and we have this upper level high pressure. I know it's hard to see in black, but I'm circling it right here. You can kind of see, I'll get rid of this so you can see better. The rotating winds kind of going around this way. Again, clockwise high pressure, counterclockwise low pressure. And there you go. I mean, pretty much the winds spin around like this. You have 91L around here. So it's causing it to move due west right now. And eventually that same high might even pull it up a little bit to the north. Again, following a similar path to Philippe. But this is also very interesting. This dominating upper level high pressure that's sitting over like the Bahamas and Cuba right now in Hispaniola. Interesting to see how this will interact here with Philippe, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's kind of just pulling Philippe down at this point, because it's not allowing it to just escape like this. Because, I mean, yes, there's a high pressure here, but it's much weaker than the one to the west of it, and it's essentially going to kind of keep it from going to the south or to the north. Excuse me, keeping it south, and pretty much this upper level high pressure kind of feeds it west this way. This one will kind of suck it in and kind of just weaken it. All right, so that's essentially what's going to happen here. Now, the same thing could happen with 91L, or one of these could back off. This sadly is not a forecast or a moving map. It's just like an observation. But we will see what happens with 91L here to see if it has the same destiny. Maybe the high backs off. One of them backs off. All depends which one, because again, there's two here, one and one here. So it all depends what happens with those two. So that's pretty much why Philippe went from going to north, from like a northward track to just a southern track, but then it's just going to die. Because this high pressure is essentially just going to say no, no, no. All right, pretty much blocking it from passing through. Now, if we look at the wind shear, again, the wind shear around this high, where it is, I mean, it's not too bad, but around it, again, you can see where that wind shear is, very much coming from the north here. And Philippe's already running into some shear problems. 91L not in so much trouble. It's doing better, right? Again, that's why I said when I pointed to you, just like I said on satellite, there's that shear to the north. But where the storm center is, things are not too bad, and that's why the storm's able to at least grow a little bit as of right now. If we look at the tropical intensity index, which again is just a fancy way of saying, is the storm able to grow? That's all it's saying here. You can kind of see conditions looking favorable, kind of. Again, the reason that this high parked here, remember the wind shear map I showed you looked just like this, which is why this sector in here is looking unfavorable. So that's why when Philippe comes from the east and traveling west, it's going to run into this area and pretty much die off. It's pretty much just kind of sucking it in and just letting it die, basically. So again, we'll see what happens with 91L conditions, kind of favorable, right, east of the Caribbean islands, and then kind of gets a little shaky again. All depends what happens with this high pressure that's sitting over the Caribbean here. So let's get into the tail end of the video here by taking a look at some modeling. We got some major models here. We have the GFS, European, Canadian, as always. We also have some bonus ones like the HWRF and the HAFS models, which is under you can find these under the hurricane tab right here. Some hurricane forecasting models here as well. So looking at the GFS, again, let's label our storms right here. We got Philippe right here, 91L looking quite strong, or stronger than Philippe, of course. But also, they're both pretty small systems as of right now, right? So there you can kind of see Philippe kind of just getting sucked into Hispaniola. And then 91L, they do have eventually moving up to the north. Could cause some high waves for a place like Bermuda, but it does get sucked out to sea and whoa, well up into Europe there. So yeah, and I believe that's the UK up there. And some of these storms, I believe like Nigel, I think went towards Iceland. Like a lot of these storms are just getting sucked to the northeast and they just rapidly accelerate. I think Nigel was moving close to 40 miles an hour when it was accelerating to the northeast here. Like these things move, right? And I mean, of course, you have the jet stream moving through here. But yeah, 40 miles an hour, that might not seem fast if you're driving a car, but if you're a tropical cyclone, remember, we track these things over hours in a day and days in a week, right? So 40 miles an hour from our perspective seems very fast. When you're driving a car and you're timing it. You're timing your drive most likely in minutes or hours if it's a longer drive. Right, 40 miles an hour seems slow. Right, so it all depends on what perspective you look at it from. But in tropical and in the tropics or for any kind of storm, 30, 40 miles an hour, that's a very fast movement. Even 20 is pretty fast. But the point is here, you can kind of see getting caught in that steering flow. And also, it's pretty much because of this upper level low. You're going to have these big low pressure systems that kind of just move through, and that's going to eventually help to suck it up to the north. So it all depends what happens up there, too. So let's take everything in weather is connected. So that's why I just got to just look around the map and you'll see what could possibly happen here. European model, again, Philippe dies off. Sorry, not Nigel. What am I talking about? 91L can kind of start off the same way. That's why I got confused. 91L pretty much moves to the west-northwest here, and then eventually does make that northward turn. Again, because we're just going to have these traveling low-pressure systems moving from west to east. So one of these will eventually be enough to kind of suck 91L up northward, kind of like a vacuum. Also, this high pressure is kind of aiding and pushing it this way as well. All right, so all these, all these steering mechanisms are in full force here. Canadian model, interesting one. It almost looks like, and all these models kind of have something in common. It's almost like Philippe is keeping 91L in line. Notice how, so the one to the left is Philippe again, and the one to the right is 91L. Notice how they kind of follow each other, but the second Philippe dies out, 91L says, okay, bye. And it kind of just, it's like Philippe dies and then 91L just doesn't care. It's like, okay, I'm just going to go to the north. Interestingly, with the Canadian note, the Philippe actually doesn't quite die. It actually kind of spawns back in. And then look at that. It follows 91L again. So it's almost like they're so close together that you pretty much just have to follow each other because they're on the same steering pattern. And that's what happens here. So it's like 91L follows Philippe. Philippe says, all right, you can go first. And then Philippe follows 91L. So it's an interesting thing there picked up on the Canadian model. But even on the GFS, right? Even again, look at Philippe, gets out of the way, 91L kind of steers to the north. So it's almost like the longer Philippe holds together, maybe the closer 91L gets to the US. It's a possibility. It's really not crazy. Not a crazy thought looking at these models, right? Again, look what happens. Philippe dies out and keeps moving away, and then 91L moves to the north. Coincidence? It could be. If we take a look at the HWRF, right? Pretty good intensity forecast model. We take a look here as it tracks. You can kind of see it just track off to the west here. And you can see right there, I'll let this kind of play out. Yeah, you can see, there you go. All right, there you can kind of see the low pretty much moving off to the west and not really budging to the north. Now, granted, this one goes out 5 days, so this is all I can show. But if we play that here from start to finish, all right, you can kind of see it's a little laggy right now. But you can see, again, not moving much to the north. You can kind of see Philippe weakening off right here. So the Caribbean, definitely be on the lookout because as it looks at the minimum, the Lesser Antilles and Puerto Rico could get some pretty intense waves. That's how it's looking right now. The HAFS model, the HAFS-A model, and I do the parent of all these models because that way it's nice and zoomed out. I mean, I'm not up in the storm's face. But again, you can pretty much see 91L. And this one is pretty concerning because this has it pretty far south and not turning to the north. So this could be heading straight towards Puerto Rico. But again, following Philippe in its tracks. Something all the models seem to agree on at least. The HAFS-B, again, it looks like it's going north and it just makes a left-hand turn and goes west. Same exact thing Philippe did. So that kind of tells me that the steering pattern up to the north is pretty much locked in and not much is happening up there, which means that high pressure is building, which means that there could be there is an increased certainty that these storms could follow each other, right? If the steering pattern was kind of wiggling around a lot and moving around a lot, chances are these storms would probably vary in track, but pretty much one's keeping the other in line, and they're pretty much following each other forward here. So that is all for today's video. 91L is certainly something to watch as the next potential Caribbean and/or U.S. threat. Definitely keep it here for updates. I'm the Weather Dude signing off till next time, and I will catch you guys in the next video.